All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're cracking open the blueprint of a guy who was basically biohacking before that was even a word. We're talking about the one and only Jack LaLanne, the godfather of modern fitness, who lived this unbelievably high-performance life all the way to age 96.
And you've gotta love this quote. For him, this wasn't just some funny line. It was his mission statement. It perfectly captures that unshakable self-belief and, let's be honest, the sheer force of will that defined his entire life. It's the perfect way to understand how this man thought.
But here's the thing you'd never guess. This icon of fitness, he didn't start out as a pillar of health. Not even close. In fact, his origin story is the complete opposite of what you'd expect. It all started with a teenager who was literally falling apart.
I mean, just look at this. The contrast is absolutely staggering. On one side, you have a 15-year-old kid just being destroyed by junk food, and on the other, a 70-year-old man performing a feat of strength that honestly sounds made up. This wasn't some slow and steady improvement, this was a total revolution. So how on earth does that happen?
Well, the answer is this powerful psychological switch he stumbled upon. He called it a total identity shift. See, after hearing one health lecture at 15, he didn't just decide to change his habits. No, he changed who he believed he was. He decided that sick kid was gone, and in his place, a completely new person was born. It's a huge idea. You don't just act differently, you become someone different.
So, okay, how did he actually go about building this new identity? It all started with the first pillar of his entire system, an absolutely 100% uncompromising approach to daily physical exercise.
This right here was his core philosophy. He didn't see health as all these separate little pieces. For him, it was one interconnected system. And in his world, you just can't have a strong kingdom with a weak king or a weak queen. They had to rule together every single day.
And this routine, wow, this was the bedrock of his new identity. It was a non-negotiable ritual that he followed for over 60 years. Just try to wrap your head around that discipline. Waking up at 4 a.m., 90 minutes of intense weight training, and then, right after, 30 minutes of cardio. Every single day. For Jack, this wasn't just a healthy habit, it was the law.
But what's so fascinating is that he wasn't some kind of motivation superhero. He freely admitted he hated getting out of a warm bed at 4 in the morning. Who wouldn't? But he didn't run on motivation. He ran on a work-first mentality. He treated his health like it was his most important job, and he got it done before most of the world had even hit the snooze button.
And get this, the man was decades ahead of his time. He pioneered this concept of muscle confusion. While everyone else was doing the same old boring routines for years on end, Jack was constantly switching things up every few weeks to keep his body guessing, adapting, and always growing stronger.
But remember, a kingdom isn't just built on exercise, the king. The second pillar was his nutrition philosophy, the queen. And it was all governed by one incredibly simple but really powerful rule.
That was it. That's the whole thing. This one simple idea guided his eating for over 80 years. It's so elegant, isn't it? If it came from a plant or an animal, eat it. If it was made in a plant, you avoid it. Simple as that.
And his war on processed food? Oh, it was personal. He called refined sugar and white flour the white menace because those were the exact things that had nearly destroyed his health as a teenager. After that identity shift, he never touched them again. Period.
Just think about the sheer nutrient density here. Before most people have even had their first cup of coffee, Jack LaLanne had already packed in more micronutrients than many people get in an entire week. 10 different raw vegetables, every single day.
Now this is where his principles get incredibly real for all of us today. Just look at this comparison. Our modern world pretty much pushes us to constantly graze and snack late at night. Jack's solution, decades ago, a simple 2-meal plan, which we now call time-restricted feeding. It gives your gut a much-needed 16-hour break. We're surrounded by refined sugars and flours. His solution? A total ban on the white menace, which, we can adapt as a 90-10 rule. These aren't just quaint old ideas. They are direct, timeless answers to our biggest modern health problems.
But those two pillars, the physical and the nutritional, they were held up by a third one. And you could argue it was the most powerful one of all, his psychological framework. He practiced what we can call cognitive sovereignty. It's a fancy term, but the idea is really simple. He just refused to accept the story that getting older means you have to fall apart. He believed he was in total control of his body and his potential.
And his age? That was just a number on a piece of paper. And his famous birthday feats weren't just stunts. They were public demonstrations of this whole philosophy. Swimming from Alcatraz while handcuffed at age 60, towing 70 boats at age 70. These acts were his way of shouting to the world that the limits we all accept are almost always just in our heads.
This quote, this is the perfect summary of his entire mindset. For Jack LaLanne, the real disease wasn't aging. It was inactivity. The body wasn't designed to break down from being used too much, but from being used too little.
So what do we do with all this? How do we take these incredibly powerful lessons and actually apply them to our own lives? How do we start building our own kingdom of health, just like he did?
Well, LaLanne had this really powerful metaphor. Think of your health like a bank account. Every single workout, every clean meal you eat, every good night's sleep, that's a deposit. You're building that wealth right now so that you can make massive withdrawals of energy and vitality when you're 80, 90, and even beyond. At the end of the day, his entire blueprint, his whole kingdom, it really rested on these three unshakable pillars. It wasn't about secret supplements or magic genetics. It was about raw discipline, the will to do the hard things, especially when you don't feel like it. It was about relentless consistency, showing up every single day, turning those actions into who you are. And finally, it was about an ironclad belief in your own potential, refusing to accept the limits that other people try to place on you.
And that brings us to the final and really the most important question. Jack LaLanne proved that a single decision can change an entire lifetime. You don't have to go out and tow 70 boats. You just have to start with one single deposit into your health bank account. So the question is, what's your deposit going to be tomorrow?